Thousands of civil service credit cards are set to be cancelled, cut in half, as part of efforts to reduce government spending, after it was revealed that more than £675 million was spent using them in the last year alone, and many of the purchases made by civil servants are little short of outrageous. Cardholders will be needing to justify their need to use one, or they're going to be revoked.
The announcement comes as the government prepares to announce drastic cuts to disability benefits. Of course, we've heard about the opposition from a number of Labour MPs and campaigners. Joining us now, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Pat McFadden. I introduced you earlier as saying that if the government's in a sticky spot, they send out Pat McFadden because you always play a straight bat and knock everything else out of the way. So, big day today. We finally find out what you're going to do with PIP, what you're going to do with cuts to disability benefits for the most severely disabled, amongst others, very concerned. What can you tell us?
This is an important challenge facing the country. We'll always want a welfare state that's there for people who need it, but the United Kingdom has been an outlier in recent years. We are the only major industrialised country that has a lower proportion of people in work now compared to before the pandemic. We've got an increasing number of people going on to long-term sickness benefits. It's 2.8 million at the moment. That number is projected to grow to 4.3 million by the end of the decade if we don't do anything. The numbers of people applying have been accelerating, and it's really important for any government to face up to big challenges facing the country and to make sure that the welfare state, and this particular part of it, which is welfare benefits for people with sickness and disability, is fit for the future, there for those who need it, but with support there also for people who could work if given the chance. OK,
look, Pat McFadden, we know that this is the message that's been going out pretty much every day, but the key concern is, I would say, two issues. One is for those who are most severely disabled, who simply cannot work at all. The other is for people who might want to work, but for whom there is no employment. And the third is for PIP claimants who might be working anyway, and a good number of them are, but the reason people claim PIP is because they're disabled and their costs are higher than for other people. Can you reassure those three groups?
Well, you've issued three different questions there. Let me deal with them. For people who can never work, who've got a condition which is never going to get better and might in some cases be a degenerative condition where it might get worse over time, of course support is there and the system should recognise they can never work. Okay. That will be, that's there and that will remain there for the future.
OK, that for people is reassuring and sounds like a done deal.
Yeah, well, look, wait for what the Secretary of State announces later today, but for people who cannot work, of course support must be there. Now, for people who could work, one of the things that we've announced is that people can try work. If it doesn't work out, then they can go back to the benefits they were on, because one of the disincentives at the moment is people go through a lot of forms and assessment and process, and then when they get there, they're a bit scared of trying work because they think if it doesn't work out, I'll be back to square one. So that was announced at the weekend. But it's also important to remember here, there are 200,000 of the 2.8 million I mentioned who said already that they would work right now, even with no further changes. We believe that that number can go up if we can get the right support in place. So we want to get the support in place for those who could work in the future. All right. And on PIP, which I think was the third group that you mentioned, there are 1,000 new people a day applying for this. The profile of conditions that people are applying for it has changed over the years. We've got a duty to make sure that the system looks at how these benefits are allocated and also doesn't always assume that every condition is permanent for the future.
OK. All right, Mr McFadden, OK, thank you for those answers to a triple question there. Can we move on to this question of credit cards? I have to tell you that our viewers who are in receipt of benefit and have been simmering about the prospect of these cuts that we'll hear about later today have now boiled over. when they've heard of the kind of purchases that are being made on civil servants' credit cards, which, of course, is spending our money, spending taxpayers' money. We've heard about luxury shoes being bought in Barbados, for example. We've heard of other expenditure, which just seems to baffle people. I mean, it wouldn't be a surprise to see a claim for old rope being made on one of these credit cards, hence money for old rope. How bad would you accept the problem has become of the misuse of government credit cards?
Well, that's why I've called a halt to this. Expenditure on these cards has quadrupled in recent years. There's 20,000 of them in circulation, and some of the examples which you've read out were brought to my attention, and I said we've got to change this system. So what we've done is we've suspended these cards, except in some very limited circumstances for people working in conflict areas overseas and so on. The people who have them, everybody's going to have to reapply to justify it. I think we'll see the number issued drastically cut in future. And we're also going to reduce the expenditure limit on them from £2,500 to £500 because it is taxpayers' money and it's important that it's treated with respect.
They've been taking the proverbial, haven't they?
Well, anything which has quadrupled in expenditure in recent years should beg the question. And it was brought to my attention. I've acted on it. I've suspended these, and I'm going to make sure that in the future, anyone who needs one has to reapply for it, and it's got to be authorised.
Do we know what these luxury shoes that were bought in Barbados, hundreds and hundreds of pounds spent on shoes?
£2,500?
Yeah, £2.5 grand. Why? Do you know why?
No, I don't. And it's because of lines of expenditure like that being drawn to my attention that I've said we need to change this. And that's what we're going to do, and that's the change that I've announced today.
What about the redecoration of the media room to make it look less blue? That was £80,000. Our Laura Tobin's just finished repainting the inside of her house. I'm sure she could do it for less than 80 grand.
Get Laura around. Get Laura involved. She sounds like she could do a good job.
No, but seriously, 80 grand to make a room a bit less blue. It's outrageous, isn't it?
Well, look, you know, the expenditure on the room was a great deal more, I think, in the last under the last government.
Oh, don't play that card. No. Come on, let's talk about this expenditure. Let's never mind the last government. Can you justify 80 grand on de-bluing a room?
Look, the room is there for media purposes. It needs some expenditure on it. Maybe we could have got Laura around at a cheaper cost, but we'll always take care to have value for money in the expenditure.
What about Lisa Nandy's department?
That's why I've announced.
What about Lisa
That's
Nandy's...
why I've announced this change on credit cards.
What about Lisa Nandy's department spending almost £1,200 on 2 leather folders, cost of nearly £600 each, could have been bought for 30 quid in the Commons shop?
Well, these folders are they're part of a long-term government contract. I suspect Lisa had nothing to do personally with that expenditure. The department issues these. They always have done to ministers. One thing to take a little bit of care of here in the questions is not to make sure that this government is judged by a different standard to its predecessors. Every minister for many, many years is issued with red boxes to keep their papers secure. That's true of this government, been true of the last government. Those boxes are expensive. They're important for security. Look, I think ministers do take care with expenditure. That's why I've announced the change that we are making today.
£600 for a leather... Look, I use a folder, and if I was asked to pay £600 for it, I'd say I'm going to another shop. I mean, it's outrageous. You can't justify it.
Look, there'll be a long-term contract in place for these folders. I doubt Lisa had anything to do with the decision. And they've been issued to ministers for a long, long time.
All right, Pat McFadden, we must let you go. Thank you very much indeed.